Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the last of our seminar sessions today. Thank you guys for holding on with us and sticking it all out with us. We now have the wonderful Ronelle from Education in Ireland and Heidi, who's also an alumnus of Education in Ireland, studying in Ireland. So we are here today to give you some more information about that. And please feel free to ask some questions. We are going to get to those throughout the session. So I'm going to hand you over to Renelle without any further ado.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stav. And welcome to Heidi, particularly today, who's our special guest to discuss factors to consider when making a decision on international education. I'll allow Heidi to tell you a little bit more about what she does, but she really is an absolute mine of information for any student or parent considering the whole journey of international education. So I'm going to kick off straight away with just asking you, Heidi, what is it that you do?
Hi, Renelle, and hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm actually not an alumnus of Irish universities, but I am a big fan of Irish university, of the Irish university system, the higher education in Ireland. I am actually an independent international university counselor. So I do a couple of different things. I do training in schools on how to develop your criteria for international education and what you're looking for. I do one-on-one counseling with students to help them find their best fit international university. And then I also publish a magazine called University Speaking, which is a South African guide to overseas study, which actually has had readership outside of South Africa as well. So yeah, so that's what I do in short.
So when a student starts this journey of trying to identify whether they want to study internationally, where they should go, when do you think they should begin this fact-finding mission?
So I normally say that, so if I'm thinking about the South African matric, grade 12, grade 11 is your fact-finding year. That's the year that you spend doing your research. So it would be the penultimate year of your schooling. So whatever year you're finishing school, the year before that, because the year that you're finishing school, the majority of that time should be spent, especially in South Africa, where your exit exams, your matric exams are so important to your high school career. You should know where you're applying by midway through your matric year. And then you're doing applications September, October time. A lot of the portals in Ireland open in October, November time, and then they start closing sometime earlier in the year, in the following year. So you do have plenty of time, but the majority of your research should happen in your second to the last year of school in grade 11.
Okay, perfect. So you've actually answered my next question in terms of the general time frame for application. But it sounds like around now is a really busy time for those final applications for students then to be able to know whether they've got into the September intake. Am I right?
That's right. So some courses are starting to close already. In other words, they're not accepting any more applications because they have so many applications already. So it's important to you should know before your mid-year exams in matric where you're going to apply. And then I always encourage kids to, if you know where you're going to apply early. Even if you're applying with your preliminary marks, you can always then submit your final marks once they come in January. But now, 1st of March really is, you're getting quite close, especially for the universities. There are some courses that close in December in the universities, the technological university, some of their programs close later. So around this time, you should be, wrapping up your applications for September entry of this year.
Perfect. So assuming one's now in this grade 11 year or the year before you're finishing school and you're starting to think, oh, I might want to consider going overseas, or your parents have the means to send you overseas, or you're considering an international education, what is the criteria? How do I even start choosing where to go and where to apply?
Phew, that's a big question. So I think there are a lot, and it's very different for everybody. And I think the other thing to really call out or to point out is that this whole process can be very imaginary, especially if you've been in school, maybe you haven't traveled, maybe you've never stood on a campus internationally. It all seems very imaginary at the beginning. But it's really important to consider the lifestyle factors. What is it that you're looking for? Northern Hemisphere has very different time frame for schooling than Southern Hemisphere. The climate can be different. The size of the campus. Do you want to be in a campus that is in the city center? Do you want to be in a campus town? Do you want to be somewhere where English is the language of socialization? Do you want to be somewhere where you are close to an international airport, close to family and friends, somewhere where you've been before? So there's a whole lot of criteria to consider, and block out the noise. I get a lot of kids who say, oh, I want to whatever university it is, and you say, oh, why? Well, my friend's going there, and they said they studied international relations and they liked it, so that's what I'm applying for. It's really important to put your head down, block out the noise, and do your own research from your own place of where you're seeing the world, because everybody is different. Every family is different. Every student is different. Try not to just do what your friends are doing, and really think about what it is that you're looking for, and don't feel rushed by other people's decisions. And maybe some kids know exactly what they want to do, even though we know that doesn't always that's not always true. People say, oh, I know exactly what I want to do, and then they get to university and their eyes are open to a lot of other things and they change. So really try to focus on what it is that you're looking for yourself, and develop a list of those criteria. Finances has a big impact. If you can afford 3 years of university or 4 years of university, if you're doing something with the view to going on to a master's program, if you're looking for something more in the field of, like in the US, an associate's degree, which is a 2-year degree, and then going out into the workforce. So all of those questions are important to answer for yourself on your own journey.
Now, in this seminar today, we've got a number of students from Nigeria, we've got students from South Africa, we've got some students from Ghana, but generally, and I know that we can't really generalize, so maybe you can speak briefly to both of them. I know you're based in South Africa and more familiar with the education system here, but just how do South African predominantly kids and students adapt to international universities, and the same what you know about the West African universities? So do the schooling systems compare well to the international education? Is it a transition that's manageable? I know certainly based in South Africa, we often have a bit of an inferiority complex about our education system, and there's many questions about the different education systems in South Africa and whether they are internationally acceptable, and whether the kids who've maybe matriculated with a CAPS or an IEB, do they or don't they get into international universities? So if you can just speak a little bit to the different African education systems, being South African or Nigerian or whatever, and how that transitions into particularly an Irish education system then.
So I don't want to get too much into curricula, because there are so many different curricula. By and large, our African students, I think, adapt quite well. Especially now in South Africa, we're all kind of getting used to making a plan. We don't have electricity all the time. That can be a challenge. I think the most important indicator of whether somebody is going to succeed is their willingness to participate in and to have that immigrant mentality, that they're going to work hard to survive there and to make it work. Loneliness is the biggest epidemic among first-year college students. So to be able to know that, yes, I am going to be lonely. Yes, it could be a challenge, but I know what I'm going to do to cope with that. So that's probably the first obstacle. There's a lot of, those kinds of personal growth issues that come before how successful they're going to be academically, because we know that a happy student is a successful student. But by and large, our especially in South Africa, our national curriculum gets a bad rap. Our kids do quite well, actually, overseas. I know kids who do the WIAC in West Africa and Nigeria also are quite successful. Some of them do need to do foundation courses, maybe. And I'm going to speak a little bit about that. There is sometimes a bad connotation, I suppose, around having to do a foundation course. I don't think it's something that anybody should be ashamed of or avoid doing, because it gives you a bit of a soft landing if you're not quite prepared, if you're lacking in one area or another, and you need to top up in some skills. There is the availability in several of the universities for foundation programs. So if you didn't do as well in South African matric as you would have liked to, or in WIAC, or whatever it is, whatever the curriculum you're studying, there is a way to fix it. And there are things that you can do. So it is really, it's a decision for the student whether they're going to be successful or not, because your first degree especially is about developing those soft skills to make it in the world. It's actually irrelevant what your piece of paper says. It's who you become in the process of studying. And that's really important. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So so you don't need to have done a Cambridge university leaving or your A levels to be able to be considered. We can there's a good opportunity. I know in previous conversations that we've had, you've always said, a good student is a good student no matter where they are or which system, and that's really struck home with me. And I think that what you've said really reinforces that where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I actually had this discussion a few times today with counselors and students. Be very careful, and please, it's so important to get advice if you're going to start curriculum hopping. And what I mean by that is there are several schools in South Africa that offer accelerated A levels from grade 11. So you can do our national curriculum, whether it be the DBE or the IEB curriculum, up through grade 10. And then in grade 11, you can hop over to Cambridge A levels. I am very wary of be very certain about why it is that you're doing that, because it only benefits you in a very small number of institutions internationally. Our national curriculum is still robust enough to make it at, I would say, probably 80% of the institutions in the world. So, be very clear. No, you do not need Cambridge A levels to go to, let's say, University College Dublin or Trinity. There may be instances with engineering, let's say. Engineering now in a lot of places, not a lot, but a few, and UC Dublin is one of them, they do like to see an AP, an advanced placement in math. They like to see an advanced placement in math, not like it's required for actuarial science or an A level. So kids who are coming in with A levels, cover that criteria in those disciplines, in the engineering disciplines, in the finance and actuarial science disciplines. So, and it's an AP, not an A level. And an AP and an A level are not the same. A level is Cambridge, AP is advanced placement. It's not the same. An AP is not as much of a commitment as an A level is. So just be very certain about why, if you are curriculum hopping, what you're doing that for.
Yeah, that's really valuable advice. Thank you. And then in terms of there's probably quite a number of parents as part of the seminar as well. Some of the biggest misconceptions that you find that parents have about studying abroad. I know you've got a lot of experience in dealing with parents and with students, and would really be interested in hearing some advice to the parents and some misconceptions.
For the parents, yeah, it's harder for us than it is for the students, number one. Number two, be prepared to eat 2-minute noodles and tuna for the next 4 years. No, I mean, it is an expensive undertaking. Your student will make it, even if they go through patches of being lonely. I think one of the biggest things, and this is kind of not really education related, and this is a mistake that I made, because as a parent, I've made every mistake in the book, sending my oldest overseas. And now my second one, hopefully I'll change those mistakes, but who knows? But one of the things that I did with my daughter is I told her what to expect. And I said to her, oh, you're going to have a great time. This is what you can expect. This is what you're going to do. And it's going to be this and that. And you know what? That was my experience. And she now, several years down the road, told me how much pressure that put on her. And it was a bit of a slap in the face, but I was very glad that she said that, because it really made me stop and think how I would have thought. My mother didn't go to university until I actually went to high school. So she didn't really have the university experience like I did at my age. So I kind of told my daughter, I never got that from my mom. It was my experience, and it was a blank slate. So I think for parents, it's important to realize that what you want for your children, we all want our children off our payroll. Okay, let's just call a spade a spade. The reason we're sending them, especially to Ireland, is so that they're off our payroll after 4 years, right? They're going to get a good education. They're going to, there's a very high employability coming out of all the Irish institutions. There's low unemployment in Ireland. So they've got a good chance of staying back for a year after an undergraduate or 2 years after a postgraduate to get some work experience. And that's the whole goal. So what we want for them is for them to build themselves in a way, and we are their, we're their support system. And we want them to build those skills so they can go out there and be productive and be off our payroll at the end of 4 years, so that they can pay us back, or maybe take us out to dinner, or maybe buy us a car when we're older. I don't know. But so I think it's important not to kind of project onto them what we expect from them, to let them find their way, and they will find their way. I don't know. Does that kind of answer
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
question?
Absolutely. I think we had a conversation with one of the Irish universities last week, which really struck me when they said just the vast difference, the growth that happens in a student, that so often it's parents, a year down the line, it's almost unrecognizable, the person
It's
that's popped out.
unrecognized.
And that's not to do with a course or the particular university, but it's about immersing themselves in that experience of learning to live in a new country and in a different country, and learning to get along with new people. And I think that, often as parents, we don't anticipate all of that really fundamentally changes a student. And I think that that's part of the excitement of the journey. And also, I think how employable those people then become later, not only because of what they studied, but because of that journey that they've lived by learning to live in a different country.
Exactly. And I think exactly right. To actually watch your child create their chosen family, and they're not replacing you. We know they're not replacing us as their family, but they're creating their own support system, is really a beautiful thing to watch. And it happens quite quickly, because 18-year-olds often, they're all in the same boat. A lot of them are away from home for the first time. They're learning how to hunt and gather together, to do their laundry together. They're all going to have pink clothes at some point in time when they wash the wrong things together. They all go through those things together. So they're creating their chosen family. And, like when we were talking, Renelle, you and I were talking to Kieran the other day, and he was telling us about how quickly their international students, this is from Griffith College, Dublin, get snapped up, because they have an appreciation of or perspective, more of a global perspective on the world. They've maybe come from the third world, from a third world country, lived with no electricity, or something like that, and they know that they've got a lot of cultural awareness that adds to the fabric of any company that they go to work for. So I think we worry a lot about our kids. Of course, we do as parents. You know, buy the right to never sleep again once they are born, but they actually do survive, and it's amazing how quickly they take control of their lives as an international student. And I think also, sorry, this is probably off topic, but I'm going to throw in. I get a lot of people who say, "So, do you think I should send my 18-year-old now, or should we wait for postgraduate to go overseas?" So, I don't know if you want this advice or if the audience wants this advice. My attitude is this: if you can afford it, and if your child is ready to go, rip the Band-Aid and go now, because it's sometimes easier as an 18-year-old because you're all in this together, and than it is as a graduate student to try to find your people and find your support group, because graduate students tend to keep a little bit more to themselves. You know, a lot of them have, you know, maybe partners already. The graduate programs are short and sharp. You hit the ground running and you don't have time, as much time for socialization. It can be a little bit more difficult to find your people. Whereas as an 18, 19-year-old going away for the first time, you tend to have, you know, more time. You're all exploring a little bit more, and it, yeah, you find your people quicker.
One of the questions that's come through, and I think that sort of speaks a little, it sort of follows on a bit of your conversation, is from mature students. I had one student who said, you know, there's a lot of talk in all of these seminars about matric and getting ready, but and certainly in the earlier questions that we had within the Enterprise Island meeting room, there was a lot of questions about, as mature students, is it still possible to make that leap? They've maybe got a few years of work experience. Does that make it easier or more difficult, or is that even a possibility for a more mature student who's maybe done an undergrad and has worked for a few years to then make the move to Ireland?
It is possible. Now, I can't really speak to West Africa as much because for South Africans, as a student, it's much easier because we don't have visas. So I can't really speak to the mechanics of how that's going to work or look for West Africans. I don't honestly, personally get a lot of mature students. I really can't. I can think of one that I've had who was going for a PhD, and it was, you know, really up to, and PhD, it's quite common for people to have worked for a little while before they go and do their PhD. So I don't really have, I suppose I don't really have a lot of perspective on that.
Yeah, I guess there's all kinds of complexities around families and who's traveling, and because often our lives by then have become a lot more complicated than maybe at 18, when you can just throw a backpack on your back and head off to wherever you're going to go and study. We've normally gathered some baggage by our early 30s or whenever. But
yeah,
yes, that's
and then you're looking at getting, you know, visas for children and, you know, and spouses and that kind of thing. It's, you know, so that adds the complication more than how do I settle in? Because if you have a mature student who's 29, 30, you know, maybe in their early 30s, you know, they know why they're going to study. They've lived, they've probably had to adjust, they've had to find their people before, they've had to communicate, they've had to interview for jobs. They've developed a lot of those skills. So as far as being able to settle into a university, I don't think that's the worry. I think the obstacles are more from the visa perspective.
Perfect. Heidi, what about world rankings? I know it's one of your favorite topics. What is your view on going for, you know, considering a world ranking when choosing a university?
Okay. How much time do we have? Because this could be a long discussion. I'm a grump when it comes to this, because I think because people don't consider why it is. Why is it that you are looking at a ranking? Is it because you want to say to somebody, oh, I went to, you know, Cambridge, Oxford, Harvard, Stanford, whatever it is? And I don't know, maybe I feel this way because I went to Berkeley, not Stanford. But that said, Berkeley is the #1 ranked public university in the United States, but I am not a ranking chaser. But the thing about rankings is this: not every ranking is created equal. So there are, I don't know, 25. I actually did an article and did all this research for one of the university speaking magazines. I can't remember. I think it was the first issue. I should know this, but I don't. And not every ranking system is created equal. So make sure when you're looking at rankings, what are you looking at? Are you looking at research output? Are you looking at a survey of how kids feel about their experience? Because some rankings are about student feedback, and that's it. Some rankings are largely about research output. And interestingly enough, a lot of the top universities, especially in the United States, are turning their back on rankings and are not participating. And the other thing is, make sure you know what, if you are studying engineering, let's say, and you want to study an obscure form of engineering, like food science engineering or food systems packaging or biomedical, it's not obscure, but biomedical engineering. Look for the university that is good in that. So don't go to Harvard, for instance, if you want to do engineering, if MIT is down the road. That doesn't really make sense. So make sure you know why you're looking at those rankings. Are you looking at it to be, to go to the best engineering program? A lot of the top programs also, remember, when you are researching university websites, all universities look amazing because they all hire high-end marketing companies to these beautiful websites, and it's always sunny, and they're always smiling students, and it's not always sunny in Dublin. I'm just a flash. But it looks that way on the website. I am a huge fan, as you know, of Irish education. Make sure you know what you're looking for. Why are you going to high-ranked university? Most parents will say, I want my child to go there because I want to make sure they have a job. Well, then look at the employability of the program. How are they doing employability-wise? Where are those kids going when they finish? When you go and talk to a university, let's say you're going to, whether you're at this fair or you're going to any other fair, EI is doing another fair in person in June in South Africa, go and talk to the universities and say, I want to study whatever your topic is, actuarial science, let's say. And you're going to talk to Ethel at UC Dublin if she's here, the rep who often comes here. Then ask her, where are students out of this program going? How much are they making? Do you have that? Sometimes they don't have those statistics, but where are they going to work? How quickly are they getting work? Are they going on to postgraduate? Where are they getting those postgraduate posts? That is really the more important questions than the ranking. And the other thing that I'll be a little bit grumpy about is The Guardian put out a study that was done in the UK amongst UK universities, and they tracked 30-year-olds. They took into account three things. One was their salary. Two was the class of degree. So did they get a first class, second class upper, second class lower? And the third was the ranking of the university that they got it from. And this was very interesting. What they discovered was the class of the degree had more of an indication, or it was correlated closer to what they were making, how their financial status was, than the ranking of the university where they got it. So what that says is, if you go to a university that's ranked 100 in the world, and you get a second class second, but if you go to a university that's ranked 400 in the world, and you end with a first degree, you're more likely to be making more money than that person who came out of a higher ranked university with a lower class degree. So I thought that I love that. And
it's really interesting.
Speaks into what I totally believe, because what I think is kids, I don't know if they feel an inferiority complex about being at a lower ranked university. I don't really know. I don't think they should, and I don't really know what the psychology is behind it. I'm not a psychologist. But I think kids work hard when they feel like they can be successful. And the harder you work, the better you're going to do. And they also develop themselves, and they add value to their degree by going and doing research, asking a professor if they can do research with them, or going and getting a job, or participating in on-campus activities, whether it be clubs or workshops or those kinds of things. And those are actually the elements that develop you most.
That's super interesting, and I think really valuable advice. Heidi, a couple of questions, and one of them I'm not sure if you know the answer to, but I'm sure you probably do, and I'm sure you certainly know it for the second side. But we've had a few questions about English language testing. Why do we need do South African? I'm not sure if you know about West African students need to be able to submit their English language tests to be able to apply to an Irish university. And if their first language of instruction was English, do they still need to do that?
Okay, so English language testing, it varies by university, by program, all around the world. There are some places where if you're doing foundations, you have to, foundation for visa requirements, you have to do an IELTS test or an English language test. If you've been educated in English, and you wrote your matric in English or did your first degree in English, there, by and large, you get exemptions for having to prove your English language proficiency.
Perfect. Now that answers, that was exactly the question, is if I've done that. So that's a good start. And then just sort of almost concluding our session there, a few questions coming through, but a number of students have said, okay, I've been in the seminar all day, I've spoken to some universities, I've listened to the seminars, I'm enthusiastic, I'm keen. What do I do now? Where do I start? If you can maybe give us a few next steps. So if I'm quite overwhelmed by all of this choice and all of these courses, how do I put the next foot in front of the other? What do I do now?
Okay, so I think what's really important, and I apologize, I seem to have barking dogs and a lot going on in the background. Hold on just a Sorry about that. The next step really is to get very kind of left-brained about it in a way. And that is, make your criteria. What is it that you're looking for? Because this can all get very overwhelming. So I often have kids come to me and they go, I am so overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I think I want to study this, but how do I start looking? Okay, well, you get your list of criteria together. Are you wanting to go to an English-speaking country? Even though, let's say, in Holland, you can study in English, but it's not an English-speaking country. So you're limited then to your degrees that are available to do in English, right? Do you want to be in a city? Do you want to be on a small campus? Do you want to be in a campus town? Do you want to be on a large campus? Do you want to be somewhere where you can do your sport, whatever that sport is? Do you want to be... does the accommodation, like a lot of Dutch universities do not have campus accommodation. UC Dublin has campus accommodation. What is the accommodation situation that you want to, is what you're looking for? And make those list of criteria first. Then look for the universities that have the degrees that you're looking for and put them on a spreadsheet. You can see I'm a nerd, I'm an engineer, right? So you put them on a spreadsheet and you go through what boxes are ticked by those programs at those universities. And you have to get very left-brained about it. That really helps your decision making. And it'll kind of all of a sudden pop out at you, your kind of leading choices.
That's really good advice. Thanks. And from the bit of experience that I've had, is the international offices of a lot of these universities are also very supportive in terms of helping you make that decision. And certainly some of the education agents as well that we work with are really well well equipped to support and assist in that process. So it's I think that sort of concludes a lot of the big questions. The one thing that I do see is a number of people have asked about getting recordings of this, and one of our team has responded that their recordings will be available on the platform after the event. So please feel free to go back and see all of that. Heidi, I was wondering whether it might be useful as well if you would, in the comment section, put all of your details, because I think that there will certainly be a number of students who might be interested in connecting with you. And I'm not sure if you want to maybe speak very briefly about what actually University Speak, not University Speaking, the Learner's Journey, what kind of service you offer, because that I know has been super valuable to many South African students in terms of their journey. I know you spoke briefly about what you do, but practically, like, what is the support that you can offer a student?
Okay. Yes. Thanks, Renelle. So what I do, as I said, presentations in schools where I actually take kids through how to develop the criteria, how to research, and how to do the mindset shift, to begin that mindset shift of high school to university. Then I do one-on-one counseling sessions that are, I have a fee that I do charge for students, and we go through how to research. So I do guided research with students. So let's say somebody says to me, I want to study actuarial science. I want to be in maybe Ireland, maybe the UK, maybe Australia. What programs are there for the criteria that I have come up with that I am looking for? So I do one-on-one individual counseling as well. So I'll put my details here, and I can be contacted to set up. I do a lot of work via Zoom. I'm based in Cape Town, so if there are students in Cape Town, I meet them in person. I travel all over South Africa, so I've done a lot of work in various centers in South Africa as well, in schools, as well as meeting with students. And I meet with students and their parents, especially at the undergraduate level most often. And I help them kind of as a family try to start the process thinking about their next step in education. And then we take a lot of time to go through the research that they do and keep refining it until they have their list of universities that they're.
Perfect. Oh, Heidi, you've frozen. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Heidi, from my screen, you've frozen, which I'm assuming would be the same for everyone watching the seminar. But
Sorry,
we have come to
I think I got cut off there.
You're back there. Yeah, we can hear you now again. You're still in freeze mode, but at least we can hear you again. But that's really, a few people have said, yes, please, we need your details. And I guess part of that is also probably just confirming that we are working with a number of the school counselors and schools, certainly across South Africa, for the South Africans on this webinar, to bring Heidi's workshops to your schools and into your communities. So if you are interested and you're keen, please, push your school counselors to get in touch with us as well, because we're very keen to engage, and we're very keen, with continuously organizing fairs and organizing workshops at the different schools. We're very keen to see how we can support as many of you as possible to explore these opportunities further. Heidi, I don't know if you had any final words, but then we'll conclude.
Can you hear me? Is it?
Well, yeah,
you
fine.
Me or just hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
I think what's really important, and I'm sorry, Renelle, I've tried to put my details in, but it's not registering for some reason. So if you wouldn't mind just popping my email address, it's heidi@learnersjourney.co.za, and you can also go to my website, which is www.learnersjourney.co.za, and you can also download a copy of University Speaking there, and watch for, we are actually doing an Irish specific issue of University Speaking that's going to be coming out probably, we're looking for early May, end of April, early May. That's going to be specific to the Irish higher education system. So look out for that. And yeah, the most important thing is don't try to go it alone. And that's not a sales pitch from me. I have seen kids kind of make some very big mistakes on their applications and choices, and choose programs that were not really appropriate for them. And I think it's important that you work with somebody who's going to kind of help you in the process. There is a lot of support from universities, and depend on the international officers. They are fantastic, and they know their universities best as well.
Perfect. Heidi, thank you very much for all of your wisdom and your advice. And I'm sure there'll be a number of students in touch, but we really appreciate sharing all of your experience for the students on the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Stav.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much for a brilliant webinar, seminar. We are going to be on the booths for another 20 minutes, so please do go back and have some conversations in the lobby. But from us tonight, thank you and goodbye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.